back to another Wildwoods Beekeeping Live podcast, and I hope everybody is having a good day today. And today we have a special guest. We have Tom here, and he's a tax accountant. He's accountant and tax expert, and also a beekeeper. So tonight, I want to welcome Tom in here, and I appreciate you taking time to join us tonight.
Thank you for having me on, Grayson.
Definitely. So first, before we get into some of the different things about starting a bee business and being able to do some of those different things, I was wondering if you could kind of share with us a little bit about who you are and what you do and kind of how you got into bees.
Yeah, well, I'm a tax accountant at Benton Safransky and Company in Thief River Falls, Minnesota. We're up in the northwest corner near the North Dakota border and the Canadian border. And I have a hobby farm where I have gardening and some animals and things. But anyway, the thing that got me into the beekeeping was an email from Tractor Supply that it said, you should have bees. And I said, yeah, you're right. Anyway, once I started with the bees, I think everybody who's watching can appreciate once you're bitten by that bug, it's you're hooked. It's hard to let go.
Yeah, definitely. I remember whenever I got into bees, at first, we kind of, were nervous, I guess, from them. But then over time, we kind of, really just fascinated by, how they work and what they do and kind of how they work together to, make something, accomplish, in the future, bees every day. And I find that very fascinating and very, interesting to watch and all that different things. And, whenever I started, I actually, watched a lot of different, because YouTube, like around 2016 was really, popular, since, people like to, watch YouTube and try to get into bees or, whatever, doing that. And, I watched a lot of different beekeepers, and I've watched David Burns. I think that was one of the first beekeepers I watched. I'm sure you probably seen him too. I know you were on his live stream once. I watched that too, and I kind of that's the first person I really found on YouTube, and I got some of his courses, and that's kind of where I'm at.
That's how I came across you, was through David Burns.
Yeah, I think we did an interview, not too long ago, about a year ago, at Have Life.
Well, you were at Hive Life, yeah, and that was the first time. And I see you in his chat now and then. And
That's right. I try to join on everybody's chats. I know there's a lot of people who have, beekeeping chats, on, whether it be Thursday nights or, a lot of other nights. There's a lot of our beekeeping chats or, whatever, and, we've had David on here before too. And, that was a good time, about a year ago. And, we kind of, whenever we, when I met him in Hive Life last year, that's really whenever my community started to grow, and I got more people watching, and that's really when I started doing my live streams right before I went to Hive Life. I can kind of really remember that, and that was really really good to get into bees and stuff. But first, I wanted to get into the topic about starting a beekeeping business. If you could discuss a little bit about some of your insights and some things you could share about starting a business, and along with that, some things people probably do need to know about bee taxes.
sure, if somebody is keeping bees and it's just a hobby, they really don't need to worry about filing an income tax return with the farm schedule on it. If they're selling honey and they're getting enough revenue that might catch the eye of the IRS, or if you're in a situation where maybe you'll get an audit just out of the ordinary course of life, and the IRS sees this stream of income that's not been reported, they might declare that as taxable. You'd be able to contest that and say, look, here's what's going on. Really, I lost money. But they might make you prove that. So when you get into the area of a revenue stream from your honey or your bees or wax, queens, whatever it is you might be selling, but it's still a hobby, I would suggest filing a Schedule F with your income tax return. List the revenue and list expense to the extent of income. They will disallow a hobby loss if you put all your expenses on there and deduct that against your wage income or whatever other income you have. So that's why I would just say to the extent of hobby income, and they'll probably just leave that be. If you're really trying to start a business, that's where it gets fun. Uh, the IRS recognizes three types of business entities. Um, Sole proprietor. You don't have to do anything to be considered a sole proprietor. It's just that's the default. Um, Partnership and corporation are the other two. Partnership, technically, you don't have to have a partnership agreement. You'd be foolish not to. Um, but if you have a friend you're keeping bees with and you want to start a business, maybe one is doing the woodenware and you're doing the bees, and your partners. You work together, but um, that's when you'd file a partnership return, and the income stream would be reported on that form, but the individual income tax consequences are sort of spread to the partners with the form K1, and the partners would each on their individual returns report their share of what happened with the business. Corporation, I would not recommend incorporating because there are record keeping requirements. You're going to have to file, for sure, you're going to have to file another income tax return. Um, and you also end up in the situation where you have to have payroll. The IRS expects corporate officers to be paid a reasonable wage. If you're not being paid a reasonable wage, they're going to suggest that you're trying to avoid self-employment tax, and they'll assess that on you. And payroll tax penalties are onerous.
Yeah, I get you.
So, and there are other forms of business entity a person could select, the LLCs and limited partnerships and things like that, but they're all hybrids based on those three entities the IRS recognizes: proprietor, partner, corporation.
Definitely, because whenever you're talking about that different thing, I'm not really an expert on starting business, but on different things, partnership and having being able to do that stuff, and then sometimes beekeepers will be there and say, well, that's not really important, but then there comes a time where in the future, when you come to that certain point and say, well, maybe this was important. So it's always good to be able to know all aspects of it, even though if you think you're not gonna be getting into a business. I always like to listen to a lot of other beekeepers on their insights on starting a business. And I've talked a little bit about making money, like basic things, like whether it be whether it be nukes or selling packages and a lot of those different things that you can do to make income and try to do that. Now, one thing I do want to talk about, and this is one that I've heard a little bit about, and maybe you could do a little discuss about. This kind of goes along into having a big business. If you are looking into going to a big business, like having a business plan, what's something that you'd want to have on a business plan to be able to plan it correctly and be able to plan it effectively to be able to work for for it to be able to work with your apiaries or whatever when it goes into business.
Well, there's no strict recipe for a business plan. Um, you can start with something as simple as jotting down some notes as to where you want to be next year. Um, for example, I want to start raising queens. Um, my business plan has been just make as much honey as I can and then try to sell it. It's that simple. But the bigger you get, the more specific you need to be, because when you get more dollars involved, a misstep because you weren't paying attention will cost you more dollars and could derail the whole thing. Um, but for example, I want to start raising queens. So in order to have enough queens to sell, you need to have enough nucleus hives. Um, to support the starter boxes and the finishing boxes and all of that. So before you start doing that, you have to plan out a bee yard where you have the space to put this stuff. So that's the kind of thing you're going to put down. Well, then, how many queens do you think you can rear and sell? And what price do you think you can charge for them? Well, let's say, you're not dealing with overnight delivery. You're just going to sell them to some local commercial beekeepers and hobbyists. Maybe you want to sell 100 at $20 a pop. So you'd pencil in, well, I'd like to get $20,000 worth of queens sold, or what have you, if you can do 1,000. Then you need to estimate the cost of having the resources to produce those queens. Well, if it's going to cost you $40,000 to make $20,000, when you're writing down that business plan, you're going to see, well, this doesn't make any sense. We better start a little bit smaller and grow our way into that. And that's where a little bit of budgeting and forecasting can go in. But when you're creating a business plan, you write down what you want to do, what you expect the results to be, and how you think you're going to get there.
Definitely. I hope the background isn't too bad because there's some probably noise going around here. But that's one thing that I can definitely agree on. Whenever you're a beekeeper, and a lot of beekeepers will know in the chat that you have to be able to support what what you're going to try to do, whether it be queens, and have a good apiary, a strong, healthy house to be able to support whether you're raising queens, or you're going to be trying to make nukes to sell. Maybe you want to make a lot of honey, a good, like a commercial bit of, if you're a commercial beekeeper, you want to do that. So that's really where that can, come in and, place effect. But I want to ask this question, and this really goes back to beekeeping. And how long have you been keeping bees?
Going into my 6th year this coming season. So it's been a wild ride, a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I started probably about, I would say 7 to 8 years ago. I can't really say for sure, but just somewhere around there. And it's always really good to get into bees and be able to do that, and something that I really like to do. And I've always found joy in beekeeping. And
Yeah.
it's always
Well, it
something.
is a journey, I do
Oh,
believe. And you never stop learning. I think even the old timers that have been keeping bees their whole lives say that. But um, I think it's cool what you're doing. I get a kick out of that. I like to see young people that work, have ideas, chase them down. Um, what you're doing is that's what you're doing right now is going to benefit you the rest of your life, even if you don't keep keeping bees. So good job.
thank you. I really do appreciate that. And a lot of people support my channel and what I do. What really everybody knows what I try to do here is to try to provide good information, whether it be beekeeping or making businesses, or whatever it goes into being a beekeeper. Really, what I like to do and try to do. And this is never a simple question, because I was just kind of curious. How many hives do you have currently?
32.
That's a pretty good bit of them.
Yeah, and it's been a mild winter. We're having the mildest winter in 150 years.
Yeah.
And this morning it was 4 degrees, and when I came home tonight it was heck was it 36. So
So,
normally we're looking at a high of 4 degrees this time of the year, so it's substantially warmer. But I'm finding that um, this back and forth is kind of tough on the bees.
yeah, get you. We got a
And
good
so,
question here. Go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
Oh, Mary has a good question here, and I was kind of curious about this too. And she asked, if you are using Hive products like making beeswax candles, do you have to separate it in another business, or does that still fall under farming?
I report wax sales on my Schedule F. I consider that a product of the farm.
Yeah, I get you.
You may have to collect sales tax on beeswax sales. I, I know I have to file a sales tax return in Minnesota because because beeswax is taxable, but the honey is not. So it isn't a whole lot of money, but I think this year I had to pay $8. Last year it was 2.
Yeah, well, very interesting there. Horizontal bees, this is just a basic question too for you. And he says, what was Tom's job before beekeeping? He really knows business.
I'm a tax accountant, and I still am.
Yeah.
A little tired tonight because I had tax interviews with farmers all day long today, so I'm kind of my voice is scratchy. That's why.
That's fine. Sometimes my voice can be scratchy too, and certain nights I do better than others. And some nights it's just part of live streaming and doing a whole bunch of other things in the day, and trying to keep up on schedule, and try to start on the right time and a whole bunch of different things, and you know
Yeah, back to earlier when you asked about starting a business, I'd be remiss not to say a person should discuss it with an attorney. They should discuss it with their own tax preparer, and they definitely need to discuss it with their insurance agent. I don't think homeowners would cover an accident. I don't know what the likelihood of an accident is or somebody getting stung, but any business should have insurance. So do talk to your insurance agent, your accountant, and maybe an attorney. You'll need an attorney if you're going to set up an LLC or something like that, which is what I did. I set up an LLC. It's called a single member LLC, which is kind of a hybrid between a sole proprietor and a corporation. But it's disregarded for tax purposes, so you don't have to file an additional income tax return, and you're just treated like a sole proprietor. That's the way I would recommend, and that's what I've done for myself.
I get you. And I've always thought about getting into a beekeeping business, trying to make income. But right now I'm really just kind of focused on trying to make my apiary manageable to that point. As you're kind of speaking on earlier, being able to have all the nucleus hives that you need and to do all that different stuff. So I've always been thinking about trying to start one here soon, make a business out of it. Near future. But right now I'm really focused on trying to really be a better beekeeper. Number one, I think everybody tries to be, and I want to be one of the as good as I can, of course. And I'm also just kind of trying to try to make sure my apiary is up to that point where I can start a business, and I always so I always been kind of looking on to, and beekeepers ask me if I'm gonna try to do a business here soon. But first, I just kind of want to get a little bit more of experience, trying to beekeeping itself. I've been even though I've been keeping bees for a good bit, like 7 to about 8 years. There's still a lot more to learn. It's unbelievable. Whenever you get into bees, you think you've learned all of it, but you actually haven't, because there's just a lot of different things to learn about bees, and trying to.
Yeah, you're wise beyond your years.
Thank you.
I think that's smart to do it in stages. And what you're saying about becoming a better beekeeper, when I referred to hobby losses earlier, if you are a bona fide business and you have losses and you're taking those losses against your wage income, for example, because you're not going to quit your job and just dive into this, you got to do it incrementally. The IRS will disallow that if they call it a hobby. And if you can show that I'm putting in the effort to learn this business, I have the skill set to run this business, and I'm keeping records, and I have a business plan, and all the things we've been talking about. What you were saying about learning what you're doing goes a long ways towards getting past hobby loss issues.
That's right. There's a lot of times, when I'm on a hobby, you probably could call me, I'm probably a hobby, because, right now, not including, I'm not including you ever have that, I mentioned to you before the stream. I don't think I mentioned it today, but right before I got on this live stream, I went back out to the bee yard because earlier, because today, is my actual brother's birthday, like I said earlier, behind the scenes. And, we had to do some of that stuff. So I really wasn't able to do much bees. I just went out there because I just wanted to make sure everybody was good and stuff. And we had a couple colder nights. I know up there, you have lows around 4 degrees, but right now we have like lows around like 32. So it isn't that bad down here. But I know up north it's probably a little bit more colder. But the problem down here is if we have these cold snaps. I'm sure you probably heard me. A lot of times where it doesn't say persistent, so then the bees may start flying, and then they, run out of stores. And we're trying to battle that too a little bit, and try to be able to overcome that too. But like I was saying, I went back out there right before this live stream happened to see if maybe I put them out the frames out in the sun to see if they would maybe come back to life, because sometimes whenever the bees are in there, where they look dead, or sometimes they're not. They're just kind of cold, and sometimes it's interesting how whenever you watch them. And then I went out there, I just blowed them, and their wings started to move and stuff. And I was thinking, should I put a front brood in here with a lot of bees on it to try to help them out and try to maybe regain that hive? And I went out there and I tried to do it, and I opened up one of my strongest hives, and then it was getting to about dark, and I was like, I don't want to do this, because then I'd come back to the hive with bees all over my suit, and I'd probably be late for my live stream. So then, that's what I said. I'd probably come back tomorrow and make sure, that they're there. But here, let me try to do something here, because there you go. Sometimes I don't have those names up there, and sometimes on my live stream, it's good to have names up there so people know who you are. And,
Yeah, you wouldn't want to mixing us up. You don't want you thinking you're the old guy.
Oh, I get you. But
you're talking about the bees in the cold. Yesterday I was out checking candy boards, and when I was walking around, they got up to 30 degrees yesterday. It was pretty nice for a February winter day here. Anyway, there's the bees are flying even when it's 30 degrees. They'll go out and
right.
buzz around a little bit. Well, there was one in the snow by the house, and I thought, gosh, I wonder if it's fresh. Well, I picked it up and put it on my kitchen counter. 3 minutes later, it was flying around the house.
Oh, I get you.
So that kind of goes to your point of where if they get a chance to warm up, they won't die.
Oh, that's right. I've had that experience too. And sometimes, outside it's cold, and the bee somehow, it happens. They'll catch you on your suit. You'll go inside for a little bit, and then before you know it, you'll hear a bee buzzing around, and maybe it may get stuck in your hair and it stings you. So, try to, be careful for that. And today, the high was like 65 degrees. I know up there it sounds like, man, that's probably pretty warm.
Sounds like heaven.
And, there can be good reasons to that, like I mentioned earlier, but then there's times where, it'll get cold, and the bees may, unfortunately not be able to make it. We got a, basic question here from Russell, and he said, Grayson, I came in late. Where's Tom from?
Thief River Falls, Minnesota.
Minnesota. That's pretty up north. I'm not really an expert on maps or anything, but I think that's probably, let's see here. It's, I probably shouldn't say anything because I don't really know much about states. My brother probably know, but somewhere up there, really up north. I know it's a couple beekeepers up in Minnesota that watch the beekeeping channel once in a while. And, and this, a lot of different, we've got a lot of beekeepers who watch our, beekeeping chats or our videos, and that matter, from a lot of different places, which is, we actually have some people watching in France or the UK, or maybe even some other places like Canada.
That's pretty cool.
200 miles north of me. It gets cold up there. I can't remember where Russell's from. Can't remember where everybody knows from, or, and that matters sometimes. It's hard to remember. But, that's just what we're trying to do. You've heard me sometimes when you watch my live streams, what I'm trying to do and what I plan on doing. And, here soon, and this kind of goes back to business because some beekeepers will do cutouts for businesses, and whether it be catching swarms or cutouts and stuff like that. They get money. People pay beekeepers to come out and get the bees or whatever. And here soon, I plan on trying to go out and do cutouts and stuff, and maybe one day make a business out of that too if I ever really want to. And do videos about it. I think that'd be interesting. But I guess it does kind of go back to businesses and stuff because I do know some beekeepers will a lot of times people pay them professionals or whatever whenever they try to be able to go and get the bees out of somebody's house or somebody's garage or something. Which
Yeah, that I don't think I have the guts to do that, but definitely talk to your insurance agent before you do that. Maybe have a friend that knows carpentry and plumbing and electric wiring and things like that.
I get you. We do got a question here from Ken, and he asked, I don't understand anything, but it says, what ROI do you try to adhere in to your beekeeping business?
Well, I don't because my business is still, um, shall we say, getting off the ground. I'm assuming you mean return on investment. Um, if I break even, I'm happy, and it's not my full-time gig yet, like Grayson is doing. I'm trying to set myself up for it to become a full-fledged business. But in the meantime, um, I don't care about my personal rate of return on that because um, I'm just trying to get the experience like Grayson to be good enough to do it full time. And that's what I plan to do in retirement from accounting. And there's a lot of personal satisfaction in beekeeping. That's why a lot of people do it for fun. That's kind of an intangible return on the investment that's where I get my satisfaction now. Definitely not with money. But another intangible thing about return on investment is, well, it's more time that I put in than money. And I try to make my own woodenware and things like that just to reduce expenses. And at this point, being able to break even is key. Anything beyond that is just dessert. But as I grow, I'll be putting my whole life into it, and as far as time goes, and whatever I can make, we'll go with. But being able to make your own splits, you don't want to be buying bees. You want to make your own queens, so you don't have to buy them. So I would say starting a bee business, I'm more concerned with expense mitigation than revenue or even net income.
I get you. I've got a question here from Russell, and he asks, Tom, are you taking your bees to sunflowers and or canola?
No, I'd love to have a field like that nearby. I'm on a ridge of old glacial lake agassiz, and a good chunk of my property is a played out gravel pit that's gone wild. It's woods, wildwood, like your place, Grayson. And then I have a lot of pasture because this gravelly land isn't real good for agriculture. Where at the specific place I'm at, but I have gobs of clover and maple trees and things like that where the bees can get nectar. So my honey has kind of a unique flavor because it's not really based on a crop.
Definitely, I've
But
always
yeah,
thought
I'd love to set a bunch of boxes up by a canola field. That'd be awesome.
definitely, some beekeepers, do that too. Whenever pollination, being in a business, there's a lot of aspects of being in business of beekeeping. Is But one thing is, it's always satisfaction area, as you said. Being in that in that spot, just as a hobby. But like I said, right now it's just a hobby for me. Try to, like I said, be a better beekeeper, of course, and try to um, expand my personal values on beekeeping, knowing a little bit more. Of course, I always like to learn more about beekeeping, and then after that, once I get a little bit more experience, like probably a couple years, I'll probably try start making up a business, and I thought about maybe some at one point, maybe opening up some kind of small little shop or something to sell things on, whether it be honey or small things that I probably could do, and then try to maybe be a bigger mid sideliner maybe one day. And it's always one thing. The bees will really take you as far as you go. Sometimes how much you can handle. Sometimes whenever you're trying to do a business, some beekeepers and may have 5 hives and automatically expand to 80. Not knowing it's probably most likely could be not for everybody. Some people can manage that even though they haven't managed it before, but a lot of times it will. Sometimes not really. Sometimes they may not be able to manage 80 hives. So I kind of want to do it by step and try to slowly do it. Instead of trying to rush into it and have more success, maybe doing it in smaller steps. Sometimes they have the saying, slower you go, you'll win a race first. And that's just sometimes I just kind of try to go kind of slow, whenever I'm doing my bees, and just kind of
Yeah, I think that's wise, and I'm trying to do the same thing also. Um, and you get better at it faster when you're not stressed out over having too much to do. I kind of fell into that trap myself. I should probably have 20 colonies,
Yeah, I get you.
a little easier pace. But when you're working at a comfortable pace with a comfortable workload, you learn better and you get more comfortable with what you're doing and therefore better at it.
I get you. Definitely, that's how I view it. We got a question here from, let's see, Ricky Rourke, Horizontal Bees, and he says, Tom, have you done the math on how many hives you need to make beekeeping a full-time business?
I'm not sure how to answer that, even for myself, because it depends on the nature of your business. Are you going to be doing queens, rearing queens? Are you going to be able to sell the wax? Do you have a ready market for those products? Are you in an area where you have easy access to crops that have a lot of nectar in them, like we were talking about canola or sunflowers?
Yeah, I get
In
you.
my current setup, the way things are going, I think I'd probably need about 120 at a minimum for production hives, and I'd probably need to be doing 300 or 400 nuke cycling the queens through to get decent queen sales. And I'd ultimately like to, if I could sell 1,000 queens a year,
Yeah,
I think that would contribute a lot. And it depends what are your living expenses. If you're living in a place where maybe you own your home and a little farmland. If you're lucky enough to be in that situation where you don't require as much income just to pay the bills. So it,
yeah,
it kind of varies by person, but I would think somewhere you could do it with 80, I'm sure, but I'm thinking somewhere around 100
I get you.
would
Definitely,
would be my minimum.
definitely. Sometimes you can think about that, but sometimes it can be really hard, question to think about. Like you said, based on your ideas or whatever, like you said. And that's just sometimes how things go. Let's see, make sure we like to get. But I do got a question here. Just a basic beekeeping question, and I'm sure you probably know about it. And this is just really something I just kind of wanted to ask. And you see, something, I know you have like 32 hives, and I was wondering, do you treat, for varroa mites, where you're at? Because I know there's, a lot of, I don't really know the way to say it, controversy, in treating mites and stuff. I was just wondering what you do kind of to treat your mites, or if you kind of just try to go natural.
No, I will treat if I get high mite counts. I am lucky because for whatever reason, I don't get a lot of mites where I'm at. Um,
Yeah,
I'm also trying to put queens in that I breed queens from colonies that don't seem to get mites, and I don't know if that helps or not, but that's like Corey Stevens is breeding the hygienic queens. I'm trying to emulate something like that. Um, but I'll do the mite tests, and I've tried the hops 3. I did that last year, and that seemed to work pretty well. I was kind of surprised. And then I also use the formic. That that stuff knocks them down pretty good. And I like that because it goes under the caps. Gets under the caps with the brood.
definitely. I definitely agree with you there. And we got another question here from Russell, and I guess does get back to businesses and stuff. And Tom, where and how do you plan to sell your honey?
I've been selling it at the local farmers market and the holiday fair where people take over one of the local arenas and sell their stuff. And also by word of mouth, I have people that will shoot me a text, say, "Hey, drop off some honey," and I will. But
Yeah,
ultimately, I'd like to, you know, have an online presence, sell it there.
yeah, I get you. I've sold my honey too. I've sold it on marketplace. I think some, and really locally low. We just kind of tried to, sell a little bit. We've sold, one time we sold like a good bit of it, and made a little bit, good bit of income from that too. And we saved, and we actually reinvested in our bees. And a lot of times that's what we try to do. When we're, whenever you try to be able to, make a business or trying to do that. And a lot of times, I'm doing that as well, And, I usually sell it around here, just kind of locally. I don't really like to try to go or ship it, which I'm sure I probably could. I'm sure that'd probably be something that anybody could do. But, I just really try to sell it locally. And maybe this year we'll have some honey, but last year we didn't have any honey. I'm sure you've heard me say that probably a lot. Last year, we really didn't have a good, flow or anything. I'm sure really all over, United States, I'm sure probably didn't have a really good flow, which I really don't know if in your location, but I know down here, down south, like wherever it be, it's really just, been, it was a bad year last year for, the flow. But this year, we've kind of got better at it, and, we're able to, we're able to, be able to overcome that and be able to go in, 6 halves, and maybe, we'll see about that third half. And if it doesn't make it, then I'll probably have 2 more halves. Like I said, I'm gonna get 6 more nukes coming up here in April. About mid-April, I'll probably get about 6 and try to replace some of the ones that didn't make it. And really, what I want to do, and you've heard me, Tom, I'm sure you probably have. I probably know what I mean. Is I really just kind of want to have. Um, I don't want to have too many hives, of course. I want to have a good bit of hives, but I would rather have 5 hives that are very, very strong rather than 20 hives that are weak, and
Yeah,
if
because you'll
we're,
be back down to 5 quick enough if they're
that's
weak, right?
right. That's right. You'll be right back down to 5. So instead, you could have a strong, 5 hives, and then you'll be able to be able to maybe to be able to successfully get those through winter and have success there. We have a question for Mary here, and she asks, any easy software you recommend? Got any tips on keeping business records? I write down cash, sales, and use Square, and just throw expense receipts in a file.
Yeah, that'll work. Um, Especially with Square, you know what your revenue is. That takes care of the top of your Schedule F if you're filing on this business. And you can add up the expenses by category and punch those numbers into your Schedule F at the end of the year. That works, but you're not going to know in real time how your business is doing. And I suppose QuickBooks would work. It's fairly, I think, kind of expensive. Might be a little bit of overkill for the business. Um, some people use Quicken. I don't like to recommend that one because it gives us headaches when people bring in Quicken reports. They're kind of hard to read. But QuickBooks Online is probably the best one for a small business. We use a product in our office called Easy Accounting, or Easy Act, ACCT. And I think that's a little cheaper than QuickBooks. It's made by the same company. And we use the professional version. I absolutely love it. It's great bookkeeping software. And it has a payable and receivable function. You can track fixed assets with it. When you buy equipment, that's usually expensed over time, especially if you're not making a lot of money with your business. You don't want to use up expense in one bad year and then not have that expense when things get better in the future.
Yeah, I get you. Definitely agree with you on that. Russell Koopman, he says, Tom, most of New Minnesota was dry last year. Did you have a good honey harvest, or was it off a bit?
I had an excellent honey harvest. Very thankful for that. It was dry, but in our area up here, we seem to get rain right when you need it. It was dry, but the timing of the rain was such that the vegetation did pretty well. However, I believe it's Ames Farm, west of the Twin Cities. I used to buy bees from them. That's just too long a drive for me. 12 hours round trip. So I get them in North Dakota now. But anyway, they were saying that they had their record year in the 1988, I think it was 88 drought. It was a horrid drought. But they had a record year. He said they were using ladders to get the honey supers on and off because there's a lot of red clover. And in a drought year, the red clover is stunted. The flower growth is stunted so the honeybees can get at them. When there's proper moisture, the honeybees can't get at the red clover, so they ignore it.
Yeah,
So because of the drought, they had a record crop. So I guess it depends on the vegetation that's around you.
Yeah.
And then me being in an old gravel pit, the water table's pretty close to the surface in a lot of places. So I have green grass when 10 miles either side of me it's brown, and we've had the same rainfall.
Yeah, I get you. Last year, we, like I said, and a lot of people hear me, I'm not gonna, say it too many times because people may get bored of me saying it. But last year, we didn't have the best of flow, so therefore we really didn't get any honey, which I kind of wish that we could have got some honey because I was planning on maybe fall, maybe get some honey, but by the end of fall, the bees had. I wanted to leave the bees with some food and be able to have them so we can have some food in the winter. And of course, I fed over winter. And when we're on feeding, I just did want to ask you real quick: do you feed your bees, and if you when and if you do feed them, what do you like to feed them?
I feed a lot. Um, our nectar flows are short and sweet here, pardon the pun. You have to have your bees ready for them. So I feed them 1-to-1 sugar water with a teaspoon or so of pollen substitute and a teaspoon or so of was it Pro Health or something I get from Man Lake.
Wow.
And I start that as soon as I can, just so they'll get rearing brood. And most times, as soon as I can means mid-April, because last year we had snow on the ground into May, and our bees showed up days after the snow was melted from where the colonies were going to go. So yeah, I feed in the spring, and then our nectar flow tends to end in mid to late July. We'll get goldenrod in August, but there just isn't much off of that, and I let the bees keep all that anyway. I want my supers off before that happens, and then I can start feeding them. So I'll feed them. Um, Labor Day is a good time actually to start doing that. Let them have a little bit of a dearth, and then feed them as much as they'll take. Again, 1-to-1, the same recipe. Um, and then if the colonies are light, I'll put 2 feeders on them. Well, I have 2 feeders on anyway, but one would be that 1-to-1 syrup, so she keeps rearing brood, and the other would be 2-to-1, so they'll apparently sock that away for the
Yeah,
winter, just to put some weight in those frames.
yeah, I get you.
And then in the winter, I put candy boards on top. I've tried fondant patties, and that didn't work too well. It seemed to kind of interfere with the cluster because it's laying across the top of the frames, whereas a candy board tends to hold that up, and there's space between the top of the frames and the candy, and I like that because the cluster can move around better.
Yeah,
And if you have a warm day, those bees can move the cluster to follow the candy.
yeah,
So
I get
yeah,
you.
I feed a lot.
I get you. I do feed a good bit too. I was starting to feed a little bit of what much you grow out there now since we're kind of in early spring. And, I just kind of like to do that sometimes, and of course, we'll probably get some more cold snaps too. We've been having pollen coming, so the queen has been laying here. And I'm sure, I don't
Nice.
know, y'all, I don't know if y'all's queens are laying, but I have one of my strongest hives. I have about like 3 frames of brood, eggs, and larvae, and it's just one of the best hives. And here soon, it's probably about on 7 frames right now, and here soon by the end of February, maybe, or I guess it's February 19th. So it'll probably be about mid March. It's just going to be overgrowing um, that one deep because 30 frames of brood along with the bees that are already in there. It's just going to be a lot of bees and a lot more brood going to be coming in, and that's going to be good for that half too. And then once we get nukes in mid-April's when we're planning on trying to get them, and we already have the we already ordered them, and we're gonna try to replace some of the ones that unfortunately didn't make it this year, and kind of tried to start from a fresh year this year, try to implement some new things that we weren't able to accomplish last year, and some things that I want to do different this year, like maybe not trying to split too many buddy, because I've done some late splits, or like in July, and they did not do good at all. So I decided I'd probably try to get a good bit of house. Maybe if they have a swarm problem, split them down the middle and make very very strong nukes. But if they're not going to have any swarming, but sometimes I probably will. In certain cases, I probably will try to do some splitting. But for the most part, I'm going to try to keep all my house strong for this coming up winter, and then hope to come out with some very healthy colonies. That's my plan. And in winter, I use candy boards, and something that a lot of beekeepers wonder is you're down south, and I've had this question actually. I've had this question a couple of times, and a lot of people ask me, um, why do you feed candy boards in Alabama? Because we're down here in Southeast Alabama, and a lot of times beekeepers wonder why I do it. And I have found that, and I've done this for 2 years. So last year, I've always mentioned my very strongest hive is always my strongest hive every year so far. I got it last year, and I think it was actually in, let's see here, 2022 through 2023, and now we're going to 2024. So this is its second season, and this queen is 2 years old. So, and I've had comments on you know, being trying to maybe, save the queen, even though she's 2 years old, and try to keep her. And she's still, I'm surprised on even and through 2 years, that queen's still laying good. And of course, I've been thinking about it. I always try to plan what I'm going to do in spring, so then I won't have to sit there whenever I'm at that point wondering what I'm going to do. Trying to be kind of proactive. I'll say that.
Have you
And
considered raising queens off her?
I actually have been. I think that's gonna be my hive that I want to raise queens off. And a lot of people had a couple of people say that to me on my recent video. I made a video on, and it's just a wonderful hive. And I really like the traits. I really like that they build up kind of. I wouldn't say too early, but right whenever it's kind of starting to warm up and get into that flow. And I really like that for down here. Now up north, that's probably not going to work too good for them, but down here in South Alabama, that's fine down here. Of course, we don't want to have too much brood frames that the bees can't control, which I think they can because they raise. One thing I always find fascinating about bees is bees know more about themselves and what they need to do than we do. So I try to also say that. Well, I like to try to be in that position where I can try not to let them overgrow, but then sometimes I'm just gonna let them do what. Sometimes I'm gonna let them be bees and let them be able to expand, let them do things. But then I'll sometimes jump in if I see that there's a problem. You know what I mean? And if there's a problem, whether it be varroa mites, make sure we have enough food and some of those different things and treatments and some of the things that every beekeeper should do and does, and that's what we try to kind of do some and try to. I found that interesting about bees, and I just thought I'd say that, and just kind of what we're planning on doing, trying to have a better year this year overall. But I think we got a question here. If I and comments went by so fast, and one thing about live streaming is trying looking up at the camera and the comments fly back so fast. And here we go. This is the question. And I use this, and Michael asks, Tom, do you use Apis? I think he means Apis Biologics.
No, I have not.
I for a lot of beekeepers, people know that I actually have some Apis Biologics, and I don't have any right here beside me. I know a lot of beekeepers who do live streams that just can grab over and get things, and for some reason I don't have anything around here and get out here. But I use it in my hives, and one thing I find really fascinating and really good about it that I like that down south it's really good if you want to stimulate the queen to start laying. If you're looking onto that perspective to be able to get the queen stimulate the queen, then you will be able to. That works really well for me. Apis Biologics, and it works well for me. In some of my hives I put it in, especially my strongest hive. I'm actually feeding some Apis Biologics to. I mix it in the water first, then I put the sugar in, and then I put it on the hive. And I think that's really what got my bees to start. Because I started feeding them a couple 8-ounce jars of one sugar water along with some Apis Biologics, and ever since then, they started just booming, and they started to raise brood. They started to do some of those different things too. Of course, I'm gonna still feed them too. Try to not do it too heavy on Apis because it doesn't need too much of the Apis Biologics, because if you put a lot of Apis Biologics in there, then sometimes that might overstimulate them. Which sometimes I guess if you're in a situation, if you are in a situation where you don't need to overdo it, and I just don't really like to do too much, but then I'll just do just a little bit, and then it's enough to let the bees have something to eat, and just to really stimulate the queen, especially in spring whenever we're in this time as we are in, and that's what we do. And a lot of beekeepers, I'm sure you watch a lot of different beekeepers. I watch sometimes Ian Stepler up there in Canada. He
Yeah.
likes Apis Biologics, using it,
Is that
and
what he calls the rocket fuel?
that's what he calls rocket fuel. And I guess I should put it in that phrase. Sometimes I just always call it by its regular
Mhm.
name, but he calls it rocket fuel up there in Canada. And
Yeah,
it's really
I
go
like
ahead.
to keep an eye on him because his climate is very similar to mine, and I suppose if you went as the crow flies, he's an hour and a half or 2 hour drive from me.
Yeah,
I think. So that's pretty similar climate, and so I like to watch what he's doing because um, I have to do the same stuff, and if I can learn from him, well, like I learned from you down in Alabama. I can learn from
Yeah,
Ian in Manitoba and Michael Palmer in Vermont.
that's right. There's a lot of different beekeepers, and you probably hear what I say all the time. You can always learn from something from every beekeeper, whether it
Yep.
be me learning from you up there in Minnesota, or me learning from Ian Stepler. There's always something you can take in and change. And I always say, I just kind of made up this saying, just kind of change the screws and the bolts and make it fit
Yeah.
your style and what you try to do in your own apiary. That's what I like to do. I watch a lot of different beekeepers. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't like to do that and who just, you know, I don't. Sometimes people probably don't really want to learn anymore, and just kind of go on their own way. But I like to learn from anybody, no matter who it is, whether it be Bob Beanie or
Oh
whether it
yeah.
be people, even people who watch my live streams. I learn from every day whenever I watch when I do these live streams, and I learn from a lot. Not just me trying to teach other people. It's really I also like to take in things that I hear from my guests, such as you and a lot of other beekeepers, and the comments themselves from people who watch and support the channel. That's really what my focus is to do on this channel. It's not really just to teach and, not just to tell people what they should do, but it's also to let other people come here and tell me some different things that work for them and what they really like to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and you've created a forum here, and with the people in the chat and your guests and yourself, there's a lot of room for somebody to come in here if their mind is open and say, "Hey, I want to try that." Or,
Uh, I get you.
you know, you
It's
can
definitely
learn from anybody.
that's right. I always say that. And some people may not agree. Of course, one thing. There's a lot of different things, in beekeeping that's controversial. Sometimes I don't really like to go on the route of controversial videos and stuff. That's why a lot of times beekeepers don't see those kind of videos, controversial. But I've made a lot of videos, like varroa mites and different things, and that's one thing I really like about the community and wherever everybody is able to have their opinions and everybody can have their thoughts, and everybody can try to still help still try to help each other no matter what you would like to do. Everybody can still kind of learn from each other and still try to be a bee community. And this was just brought to me a while back, and a guy told me in the comments on one of my shorts actually that beekeepers would be better together just like bees are. You know what I mean? And bees work together, and they work together to make something, um, work in the future, like I said earlier. And that really is, what I really like to try to implement, for beekeepers. That's what we really try to do on this community is try to help each other and try to not just teach and not just, teach or whatever, try to learn and help each other, you know what I mean? And that's really what this community has done for the past a year, whenever I was in it, I wasn't here. There's times, where I wasn't here. I really had no idea about this community, which it's been here for a while, I'm pretty sure, but I really didn't know about it because, I really actually first got on this live streaming thing like actually in late 2022. So that wasn't really too long ago. And I really didn't know what StreamYard was. I had no clue what it was. And I just um, decided, all right, I'll try it out and see if it would work. And I did my first live stream. I remember it was like a 2 hour live stream, and it was a pretty long one too. And we did it for a little while, and it worked pretty good. And then we started to. I figured out my first one was actually on a Sunday, and I thought I was going to do it on Sunday, but then I decided I'd do it more on Monday. That sounds a little bit better for me, and better for my schedules and whatnot. And that's just what I've been doing for the past year. I've actually been doing these things for about a year, so that's pretty. I guess that's pretty cool too. And it's always good to get guests on and try to put more guests on. And I have, I really appreciate you jumping on here too to talk to us about starting businesses or being able to be able to do some of those different things. So I really do appreciate you coming on here and speaking with us and talking a little bit about bees and starting a business or bee taxes and a lot of very good topics for beekeepers to learn from. And I think we're probably about an hour already into this thing. It doesn't even feel like an hour, but I'll probably go on and end us off here. But I really do appreciate you jumping on with us, Tom, and we really do appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I enjoyed it, and uh,
Definitely.
I, I applaud your efforts. You've created a nice forum here. You're doing a good job, and it's nice to see um, when young people get involved in things and run with it like you have. That's impressive.
Thank you.
So
I
thanks
really
for
do.
having me on, and
Definitely.
appreciate all your viewers, and I hope they enjoyed it too.
Definitely. I enjoyed it. I know that for sure. And we appreciate you jumping on here, Tom. We'll catch you. We'll see you next time.
Sounds good. I'll be on the other side of the screen next week.
Definitely.
All right. Good night.